The one-night affair with Bathsheba resulted in God's curse upon David's household. When David learned that Bathsheba was carrying his son, he planned for Uriah to be killed on the battlefield. But why did King David resort to such a dark scheme, despite Uriah serving him with honor and devotion? Did Uriah's loyalty and service mean nothing in the eyes of David? Before we answer these questions, subscribe to our channel and like this video. In the season when kings traditionally lead their armies into battle, King David chose to stay behind in Jerusalem. David remained in the comfort of his palace, but he entrusted his commander Joab to lead the Israelite forces against the Ammonites. One late afternoon, David rose from his rest and strolled upon the rooftop of his palace. As he strolled aimlessly on the rooftop, his eyes landed on a captivating sight of a beautiful woman who was bathing. The woman was undeniably beautiful, and David would not keep calm of the sight before his eyes. Immediately, David sent a messenger to inquire about the beautiful woman's whereabouts. The messenger returned with news. She was Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and wife of Uriah. Uriah was one of the king's loyal soldiers, who had served him for many years, with dedication. Regardless of Uriah's faithfulness to his king, David sent for Bathsheba and invited her to his palace. Consumed by desire, David received Bathsheba in his palace, and he spent a night with her. After the events unfolded, Bathsheba returned to her home and stayed there. As time went by, Bathsheba discovered news that could determine her husband's fate. She was pregnant with David's son. As soon as she discovered what had happened, in the absence of her husband, she sent a message to the king, informing him that she was pregnant. Alarmed and desperate to cover his heinous act, David knew that he had to cover his dark deeds as soon as possible. He summoned Uriah from the battlefield, under the pretense of seeking news of the war. When Uriah arrived, David inquired about the welfare of Joab and the troops, and then urged Uriah to go home and rest, even sending a gift after him. But guided by loyalty to his comrades and commander who were still on the battlefield, Uriah refused to go home. Instead, he slept at the entrance of the palace with the king's guards. When David learned of this, he questioned Uriah. "You have just returned from a long campaign. Why didn't you go home?" Uriah, devoted to his work and soldiers, explained that he would not go home to drink, eat, and lie with his wife, while he knew his fellow soldiers were camping in the open fields. David, undeterred, invited Uriah to dine with him and made him drunk, hoping this would persuade Uriah to go home. But again, Uriah remained steadfast, sleeping among the palace servants. Discovering that his wicked plan had no chance of succeeding, David sought into another plan, which could change his life, and that of his family, in eternity. The next morning, he wrote a letter to Joab, instructing him to place Uriah at the forefront of the heaviest fighting, then withdraw, leaving him exposed to the enemy. Uriah carried his own death warrant back to the battlefield, but he did not know it. Joab, adhering to David's orders, positioned Uriah in a dangerous spot, where the fighting was fiercest. The enemy soldiers advanced, and amidst the chaos, Uriah fell, along with several of David's men. Joab sent a messenger to David with news of the battle, preparing him for the king's potential anger. The messenger was instructed to deliver the grim news of Uriah's death. After David received the news, he sent the messenger to encourage Joab and tell him not to be discouraged. He directed the commander to strengthen their attack against the city and capture it. When Bathsheba learned of her husband's death, she mourned deeply. After her mourning period, David brought her to his palace, and she became his wife, bearing him a son. But the Lord was displeased with David's actions, setting the stage for a reckoning to come. As we will see in our next video, the Lord sent a prophet to David to reveal his wickedness. Despite King David's repentance for his sins, his son died shortly after birth, and his house welcomed a sword that could continue to cause chaos and deaths throughout his lineage. If you found this story interesting, subscribe to support us, and catch up on the next episode as we discover the aftermath of today's episode.